I want to welcome a team of 4 CustomerX rock stars who are going to be taking on our first topic here. And I think that's going to be you, Heather, that's going to kick it off. So let me introduce Heather Pritchett from OutSystems.
We wanted to actually just kick things off. We've got a great team here, a panel of really great experienced customer marketers, and we're really looking forward to talking to you about some things that we've done to work with our internal stakeholders to get buy-in for the customer programs. So let me click forward here. So the agenda, Amanda, did you want to kick off as we advance?
Yeah, so just a few housekeeping rules, and Jeff sort of touched on these, but you'll get a look at the agenda here. We're going to run through some introductions, and then we'll dive right into the content. I'll be moderating a little bit, which means I'm going to try to keep an eye on questions that you guys have, but if we miss them for some reason, don't hesitate to repeat yourself. It's not on purpose. We're hoping that you guys have a lively chat. This is also a very interactive session, so at times we're going to be asking you to do things. So you might want to have a notepad handy or a blank Word document if you are more in the typing mode of taking notes, but we are going to be asking you to do some things. So be prepared to do that. And don't feel like you need to try to capture everything. The slides and the recording will be available after the session. We want this to be as interactive as possible. We're encouraging you to ask questions as we go along, but we will hopefully have time for Q&A afterwards as well. So let's jump right in, and we will all introduce ourselves so that we know what we're talking about, or at least have experienced what you're experiencing.
Awesome. So my bubble's first, so I'll introduce myself first. Hi, everybody. My name is Victoria LaPlante, and I am about to start a new position next week as the Director of Customer Marketing at a fintech here in Boston called Numerated. But I've spent the last, 8 or so years building and growing customer marketing and advocacy programs here in the Boston area, primarily at a company called HubSpot. I'm sure you've all heard of it, as well as Influitive as their head of customer advocacy there. And have had a non-linear career. I actually started out in sales and I studied tourism. So how I ended up here as a customer marketing manager is unbeknownst to me, but just really love to tap into and leverage the power of customer voice as it really is instrumental in all areas of an organization, as we're going to get into here. So thank you for having me.
Great, and my bubble's next to the right. So again, Heather Pritchett. I'm responsible for customer voice at OutSystems, which is a software company. We offer a modern application or modern platform for application development. I've been in a customer advocacy role for about roughly 4.5 years now, and have grown into the position that I'm in now, which is to lead the most amazing team that's very focused on helping our customers share their experiences with the world. And we really want to do that for 3 major reasons. One is to deliver more value to our customers. We also want to support the efforts that we have to grow our awareness in the market. And then of course, support and accelerate the sales efforts.
Great. Hi guys, my name is Amanda Salem. I am currently the Community and Customer Marketing Manager at Ignite, which is a tech company providing governance and content solutions for businesses. Like Victoria, my career has been very nonlinear. I have a background in journalism and public relations and have had what I will call some very interesting stops along the way, including doing special events at a casino. If you guys ever want a story over drinks, then that's the place to go. But I did for several years, manage a large advocacy program at Staples, which is where I met Jeff and the SLAP5 team. And now I'm managing a community and some of our customer outreach efforts at Ignite.
And I am Sarah Schreiner. I work for ADP. We're a human capital management software and outsourcing organization. My career actually sits almost squarely in client experience, which has been a really fun adventure. And it's been special for our organization to have many of our customer programs start and sit within client experience. So we manage advocacy, our events, our engagement efforts that we have with our clients, all through this client experience lens. So I'm excited to bring that to the panel today.
Wonderful. So one of the things we want to do quickly, you've got a sense of who we are, and well, we'd love to get to know everyone individually. 50 people on a virtual format doesn't make that possible. But what we do want to know is a little more about your journey as you're trying to build your program and as you're trying to engage stakeholders. So we do have a poll for you guys to participate in to give us a sense of where you are. We'll give you just a minute to take a look at these options and to weigh in. I'm loving to see that we've got some folks in here who have support already. Certainly value your perspective and your questions. It looks like a lot of you have some buy-in, but still some holdouts. That's a good position to be in, and we'll talk later about why that's great, because you have an opportunity to have some internal evangelists. And we've got a few folks who are still at the very beginning stages. And so some of what we'll be talking about is really going to be centered in that beginning stages, but that some buy-in with still holdouts definitely will have some insights there as well. And for those of you who have the full love of your stakeholders, we're glad you still joined us, and please feel free to share some of your ideas as we go forward and have some of these interactive things, because I know everyone wants to hear that. So, all right. So first, we're going to talk through quickly the key stakeholder personas, and these are pretty broad, and each of us are going to briefly talk about these, and you might encounter these in your organization. So let's kick it off.
Awesome. I'll start with the communicator. This is one that is pretty near and dear to my heart, especially because I do sit in client experience, but our customer programs can have so much positive influence on the communicators in our organization. So for us, that means a really close partnership with our marketing team to ensure that our clients have a voice in the way that we go to market and the way that we talk about our solutions, our products, and make sure that our clients' voices are represented really well. And we also give clients some fun opportunities to be featured and spotlighted through this partnership with our marketing team. But you also think about some of like the deeper reach in marketing, maybe things like social, reviews, other community components. There's so much that these stakeholders can really benefit from partnering with your program. So as we really got off the ground, marketing was one of our first teams that really bought into what we're doing, because there's so many clear ways that we could provide value. And again, oftentimes that looks like connecting our stakeholders with clients who are interested in giving quotes or being part of testimonials or case studies, or it meant pointing our clients in the direction of reviews or social sharing, and really being able to leverage their voice in communication. So this one is really important. We'll talk a lot more about it as we go along. But think about who your communicators in your organization may be. If you have that traditional marketing function, you have some other folks that go to market or that talk to prospects, this is a really important persona for you.
Awesome. I think I'm up next. So I want to talk about the seller persona. So traditionally in a B2B organization, these are going to be folks in your sales organization or potentially in account management looking to help upsell or cross-sell your existing clients. When I led the program at HubSpot, I actually sat within the marketing team underneath a team called Sales Enablement. And our motto or charter was to create content, tools, collateral, and programs that leverage the power of our customers and customer voice to enable sales to sell faster. How did we do that? We were really responsible for generating case studies, customer reviews, testimonials. We launched a referral program and leveraging customers in the field, as well as in smaller customer events where we would invite a prospect to meet with clients. And people in the seller role really want to hear the authentic voice of clients, because they want their prospects to hear not only from them as a seller of the organization or of that product, but through customers who have used that product. Because in today's day and age, we all really value the users of the things that we want to purchase, as well as the information that's being provided to us by that organization. So the seller here is a critical role. And I think one of the ones where customer marketing and advocacy can have a real tangible impact, because you can pretty literally attribute sales revenue to reference and activities and customer programs. So this is definitely a key one.
So kind of the next stage in a lot of customers' life cycle after being sold to is that they will have a customer success or a customer service manager who really manages that account. These people are really important in a couple of ways, and it's a real give and take relationship. I love our customer success organization at Ignite because they're extremely customer focused. And so these are great partners to have, particularly as I think everyone here is really focused on making that customer experience the very best. These folks are often your strong allies there, but they're also often the people who hold the keys to the relationship. So as you are trying to get customers to participate in your program, these people might be the gatekeepers. You're really going to have to create a good relationship with them in order to have that access. And also your results are going to have a real impact on them as well. So a lot of times it's easy to communicate to them what the value of your program is, because it can add to that customer success, and it can add to that customer experience. So that's really a critical element. And I can't get close enough to our customer success people because they speak the lingo, they know the deal, and a lot of times they have those intimate relationships. Kind of on the other flip side of that is the budgeter. This is finance and procurement, and a lot of folks don't encounter this depending on the size of your company. If you're at a larger company, you may have to make the case directly to finance, or you may have to prepare something for your leadership to present to finance or to a procurement organization. It's key to remember what's important to those folks might be a little bit different than what's important to your communicators, your sellers, your peacekeepers. Being able to speak the lingo, to talk intelligently about what tools you'll need and how that impacts your budget is really critical. So it's always nice to have the people on your side who kind of hold the purse strings. So just somebody to keep in mind, even if they're not going to be intimately involved in the day-to-day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I will wrap up with the producer, which is probably in your organization either going to be more product management, R&D, and engineering, or all of those. In our case, we work primarily with product management and the senior leadership there. I think they are a critical component for us in the delivering value. We work with them very closely. And probably one of the good points of getting started early years ago with a customer advisory board is they were very keenly involved, keen into getting involved with talking directly to these customers. Our advisory board is, like most of them, made up of senior execs at our most strategic customers. And so they really wanted to be able to hear what's truly happening in our customers, not just living in our silo. And then they also wanted those inputs into the roadmap and validating what they're thinking. So that really helped as we've evolved our programs and worked to give more back to what we call our ambassadors or advocates, really, is delivering value back to them and keeping that close connection to them, letting them know what's happening with the product, where it's going, and then and being able to provide feedback and influence. So that one is really important in our organization.
So lots of different personas in each of these, and depending on where you are in your journey, those of you who are just starting, you might have to kind of tackle all of these at some point. For those of you who might have one or two holdouts, you might see where they fit here. So we want to do a little bit of an exercise, and maybe you've already taken a look at this while we're chatting. Consider how many of these archetypes you're facing in your own organization, where you are with them, whether they're bought in or not, and start to rank them in order of priority for your specific endeavors, your road to success, who's standing in the way, who might, be that best inroad for you. Because what we're going to do in just a moment is talk about what's important to each of these personas in terms of metrics and ways that you can prove value to them. We'll give you just a minute to think about that before moving on.
Mm-hmm. And feel free to use the chat too if anything comes to mind that we cover, that we didn't cover, or anything specific to the exercise. We'd love to see what you have to say too.
Wonderful, yeah. I think Jeff mentioned earlier, people aren't shy, so. Howard, while everyone's doing the exercise, Howard has asked a great question, which is, what initiatives have you undertaken to get all stakeholder personas on the same page? We do talk about this a little bit later, somewhat in talking about methods of communication, but I will say a lot of what we talk about is aimed at gaining approval from specific stakeholders. In terms of getting all stakeholder personas on the same page, one of the things that we have discussed and we'll touch on later is really being able to identify what your program is and isn't, and making sure that you're being clear about that with everyone. So we'll definitely dive into that a little more later, but that's an excellent question because they can all have competing priorities. And sometimes if you're doing really well in your program, you might find yourself pulled in many different directions. So that's an important thing to consider.
Mhm.
All right, let's go ahead and move along. Partner marketing as stakeholders. Yes, that's really, Shelley, that's great. We do have partner marketing as well in our organization, and they are involved in customer implementations. And that's a really unique audience. And I don't know, Heather or Sarah or Victoria, if you want to weigh in there, but great point for that.
Yeah, agree.
Definitely. I liken it also to field marketing underneath the umbrella of communication, because when you have marketers who are specifically responsible for in-field activities and programs, you really need to have them bought in to distribute kind of from the top down what you're doing from a programmatic standpoint, so their field reps can take advantage of the program as well.
Yeah, I really think it goes back to what we're about to dive into. So what's in it for them, because what's in it for the partner is a little bit different. It's more about their customer, their relationship with the customer. So I think they're definitely a key component that we can cover as well.
Yeah, so we've got a list here of the what's in it for them, but specifically thinking about key metrics, right? There are obviously some softer benefits that are a little more difficult to quantify, but on this left-hand side, we've listed out a lot of the key metrics that you might have access to in your organization in terms of reporting that align to these different personas. Obviously, there are going to be some crossover points. For instance, we probably could have listed NPS on almost every single one of these, depending on your organization and what people are into. But this is just a starting point to start thinking about measurement, because at the end of the day, that measurement is going to be very critical in proving value, and proving value is always a challenge. So we want to spend actually a little more time on the food for thought, which is, as you were ranking your personas, and we would love to hear more about it, if you had issues determining who's the most important, let's say you said, oh my gosh, I've got 4 of these and they're all of equal importance. That's a challenge. You can't digest that whole elephant at once. So one of the recommendations that we had was take a look at the metrics that are available or that are important to each of these personas, and start to think about where you are in your organization, what's already available and easily reported. So for some places, NPS is already being tracked. It's easy for you to see. You can measure NPS before engaging in a program and during and after, 6 months, a year. You can take a look at that against lookalike customers and start to see where the impact is. Those are the low-hanging fruits. Those are the easy ones. But then the rest of these start to get a little crazier. So I want to hear from the rest of the panel. Let's talk about these other metrics and what you guys have experienced.
Yeah, I'll jump in, because I think one of the things that we've struggled with the most is starting to transition from the things that are easy to track, some of the more tactics, and then translating that to impact. So we may know how many customers have spoken on a webinar or provided a analyst reference or spoke to the media. So we can track all that activity, but how does that translate into actual impact? And that's something that we're looking into moving into next year. So how can we start to gear more towards that versus just kind of tactical reporting?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I love that, Heather, especially when we are talking about stakeholders. I think a lot of the time our stakeholders don't really understand, like, is this number good? Is this bad? Like, what does this really mean to me? So I think, figuring out what it is that they're driving after, your stakeholders, and determining where your program can fit in to help support their initiatives, and then using that language when you talk to them can be so valuable, because it really puts you in your stakeholders' shoes and shows that you're there to support. So I can give an example. This was not already available or super easy. It probably falls more into feasible, but required some work. We were able to support both our client success team and our producer team, our product team, by looking at the number of hours that we were saving for both of those groups to fill product feedback sessions. So we heard some noise from our client success team that, like, product is always bothering us and they're sending us all these emails and they need clients all the time. And so instead of ignoring them and saying, like, suck it up, it's part of your job, that was something that we hopped in and said, okay, this feels like a pain point for one of our stakeholders. What can we do about it? So we ended up working with product to pull all requests for client feedback through our customer program, which made both parties pretty happy. But then we could also go back and talk to both stakeholders, and we figured out how many hours that they were spending originally on trying to fill one session and where they were now with our help. And we were able to find some pretty compelling, hours data that we were saving our internal partners. And once we could talk that language to two teams that were strapped really thin, that, look, our program not only is getting you client participants, but it's getting you hours back in your day, they were all over it. So that was really, really helpful.
That's great. And something that we have done that I think has worked really well to understand how much of an impact some of these activities have is in a post-sale survey. So this is something that I've done at almost every company that I've been at, partnering with the sales organization. Once you've closed a deal, sending out a quick survey to that new client to thank them for their business, welcome them to the organization, and then ask them what resources or information helped impact your decision to buy our product or services, and then have them stack rank those. So did they, read a case study? Did they visit a user group event? Did they, have a sales reference call? And then you can benchmark and measure those over time to really show the impact that these customer programs and activities can have in that sales aspect.
Amanda, I'll add one more as well, because it's very fresh in my mind. I just came from a presentation about this to our marketing team, but it may resonate with a lot of people. So for us, our website experience is very critical to our growth and our brand and awareness efforts. And one of the things that that our team had done some research on is the value of customer stories, so like case studies, et cetera, that are in the evaluation journey. And we know that they are a huge component of that. So we wanted to see if, okay, one of the major goals of the website was higher conversion, contributing more to leads, MQLs, and then of course new logos at the, is the ultimate goal. And so what we undertook as a project, both with our team and the web and design team, to completely revamp the experience of the case studies on our site. And the whole mission of that, again, is working towards optimizing the evaluation journey of a buyer. And one of the things that we discovered, because we have just launched this a few weeks ago, and we're still even retrofitting old case studies, but from some of the new ones that we've launched, comparing with our old performance, we've seen page views go up, we've seen time on page go up, and we started to see conversion. So there's a dramatic improvement. So we're really, really excited to see how this is going to contribute to some of those company goals that we have. And right now the trend is looking really good, and we'll continue to monitor and optimize. But that's just another way I think that you can start to show the value of the programs that are in place, is with those key initiatives, and even just something as simple as a customer story, how it can start to contribute to the pipeline.
Right, all wonderful stories, and we're getting some good chat in here as well. So I encourage everybody to open up the chat and see what your fellow attendees are saying if you haven't yet. I want you guys to get ready though to participate, and if you haven't gotten the chat open, you'll want to, because what we have next is an exercise that we want you guys to take part in. Because for each of these personas, the first thing that you have to do, and the ongoing thing that you will always have to do, is communicate with them. So we're going to tackle how you're reaching them. So we're going to give you 2 minutes. I'll start the timer. I want you to write down, not in chat, don't share some of them, but write down all the channels you can think of to communicate with your stakeholders. And we want you to get creative. Think outside the box. Yes, you have meetings. Yes, you have roadshows. If somebody brings me something like a Skywriter, I'm going to be super excited to see it, and we'll all talk about that. But think creatively, because there's a lot of opportunities in each of them. Do think differently and respond differently. So 2 minutes starts now. Feel free to share a few in the Zoom chat. We've got about a minute remaining. Oh, I see someone mentioned Pendo. Great one.
Yeah, some great ideas coming in the chats.
I'm
Can't
loving
wait to
this
try some of
trophy
these as well.
Who couldn't use a trophy now and then?
Yeah.
I feel like especially now. We all deserve trophies right now. You guys have about 20 seconds remaining. Keep sharing, keep letting us know. We're going to take a few minutes to discuss what we've seen and what's worked for us after this. All right, we're gonna wrap it up and move to the next slide. I'm loving the shout outs to Pendo because we just used them to invite customers to an event and the numbers were crazy. What is a Skywriter? Howard, don't make me feel old.
Oh,
I refuse to answer that on the grounds that it's going to make me look antiquated. All right, we're going to talk, each of us are going to talk briefly about some things that work for us. Nothing's too crazy or exciting, but I think some tried and true stuff. So
yeah, so one of my favorite ones is just to get as many people in the organization involved in your program by putting on a roadshow. So this is something that we did at HubSpot and we made a big deal out of it. We had t-shirts that had the brand of our program name on it. We had water bottles and fun little swag to get them really excited leading up to that meeting. And then we would showcase not just the program in theory, but also in practice. So we would showcase real results that we had specific to that team. So for example, our product team was about to launch a new version of that homepage. I actually took variation A and variation B and didn't ask for permission. I gave it to our advocates and said, hey, advocates, which variation do you like better, A or B, and why? And then I came prepared to that meeting with our product and web team with those results. And they were blown away by how quickly we were able to get such tangible pieces of feedback from our customers, and having something that is tangible, not just in theory of a benefit, I think went a long way during that roadshow.
I love that, Victoria. Part of what we did was actually use some media options. We put together a quick, like, I call it a hype video, because it's something that makes me feel very hype. I don't know if everyone would say the same thing, but just highlighting what the program is, some of the key pieces of information about it, like the size, the breakdown of products, the different like people and personas that we had in the program, and then some of our key results as well. So for the hype video, depending on your bandwidth, but it would be great to do it by type of stakeholder. But what I ended up doing was just including some key stats that would resonate with a few of our different partners. So we talked about the things like those hours saved, or the number of social shares, and like some of just the stats to pique their interest. And then I also recorded a really quick podcast. I didn't have a cold at the time, so my voice sounded slightly better than it does right now, but just walking through a little bit more detail. So what I found when I was trying to get the word out about our program is that my calendar was getting really jammed with meetings and presentations. And while I do think that's very valuable, especially as you're starting out, these use of media and use of some recording options that were a little bit more creative than talking head on some slides was really helpful to help get my stakeholders attention.
You'll have to share that hype video, Sarah.
It's hype, I promise.
I would love to see that as well, because I love that idea. We've been actually starting to explore how do we do more video to explain value and to get buy-in and that sort of thing. Kind of like Victoria, not so much maybe of a roadshow approach, but I think we've had some of the best results in just getting slots like on a regular cadence with our key teams. One that we do put a lot of effort onto is our sales team, because they're on the front lines of being able to use customers to help with sales. And as we've talked about, you can also more easily tie that back to revenue. But one of the things that we found that works pretty well is if we're trying to launch a program or an initiative or get visibility for something, is to actually launch a contest. For example, when we were trying to go after recruiting new advocates into our ambassador program, as we were getting things started, we launched a contest for the sales team to nominate. And we promoted that through email, and then going into these, the various meetings, the sales leadership meetings, the full team meetings, and promoting that, continuing the drumbeat of communication to drive that, and then promoting the winners, and then promoting what value the ambassadors start to bring. So we've been, working for several years in that capacity of just staying on the team calendars, because the teams change, they evolve, people leave, new people come on. So it's a constant push to explain what the programs are available, and then how can they benefit. And the most important part of that is focusing in on what they can get out of it. And like we've talked about, is different for each team.
So mine's short and sweet, but what really has worked well in the past at the organizations I have been at were periodic emailed collections of customer quotes and feedback. Everyone wants to hear the customer voice. They want to hear it in the customer's words. But sometimes that can be difficult to get, except for, your customer success people are accustomed to seeing that. But for sales and for even finance folks and a lot of your other stakeholders and product, et cetera, seeing customer quotes on a regular basis and understanding just how on the ground we could get with our customers and the level of access and authenticity that we could get after warming up these relationships with them was so eye-opening, both positive and negative. They were really interested in seeing the feedback that customers hadn't been comfortable sharing with them before. And that worked out really well for us and really helped us get a toehold in. We do have a couple of questions. Someone here was asking, Heather, how do you track and manage the competition?
Yeah, well, we actually have a reference management system. So we were able to take the nominations through Salesforce, our CRM. So it was very easy to track it in that way. If you don't have a system that does it automatically through, through Salesforce, which is the tool like the sales team, for example, uses each time, I'd recommend, maybe some type of email DL, so it goes into a specific email, or you could even come up with a designated Slack channel. And unfortunately, you have to do it manually in a spreadsheet, but that's how we did it. I don't know if anyone else on the panel has some ideas as well, other suggestions.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. You could also consider like some sort of survey and put the onus on the person to submit their lead that way too, and you could have everything tracked a little bit together. But the automation would be very nice in that case.
Yes.
Yeah, we have given our sales folks and our customer success folks individual UTM codes. If there's a particular initiative that we're driving to, giving them their particular URL so that we can look in Marketo and see a full list of what the source was, so that we can quickly sort and see. But that also has a little bit of error, because depending on the customer, I know a lot of times they'll see the URL, they'll say, oh, I'll come back to it later, and then they maybe find it in another way. So you've got somebody doing the front end work, but that click kind of gets lost somewhere. So use with some caution. All right, really quickly, we're gonna hit this right-hand side. As you're thinking about your different communications initiatives, there are some factors to consider. Time and budget, obviously, persona preferences. Not each of your personas is going to want to be communicated with in the same way. Established channels. I think Victoria, you had a great point. The roadshow is one of those things that's really exciting. It gets in front of people, but an established channel, like Heather mentioned, which is getting slots on the stakeholders team meeting, that works as well. So make sure you're taking note of a lot of your favorite ideas and figure out how that maps to your personas. We are going to use some of this data later. So, all right, let's move along, because we've got about 20 minutes. We want to make sure we have enough time to dig deep into some of these things. All right, we've talked about the who, we've talked about the how we get in front of them, but it's important that we talk about the potential barriers. No one likes to think about the negative side, but it's important to sort of preemptively think about what are your barriers, or once you're kind of in there and getting support and success, and how you tackle those. So let's kick it off. I think, Heather, you were going to take You were going to talk to us a little bit about flagging attention and engagement from your stakeholders.
Yeah, and that one is something that we're working through right now. I think we've learned a lot. And one of what I really was just talking to it a little bit about staying in communication on these team meetings. It's got to be an ongoing drumbeat. You know, it's out of sight, out of mind. People start to move on to other things. I saw from some of the survey responses, so thanks for everyone that responded to the pre-event survey, that a lot of the challenges were tied to competing priorities and getting people's attention. And with the approach of what's in it for them, keeping that drumbeat going. So a couple of things that we've done. For example, we're just relaunching our reference management process. We've created an entire communication plan ongoing, you know, like the big boost, and then what is the cadence of things that we need to do. We've recruited evangelists from the sales team that have had great success to record a video testimonial, to get quotes and get them to speak on our behalf. So there's a whole lot of things that we've got planned. We're also re-looking at how do we distribute this information across the organization and keep people excited, kind of like Amanda, what you were talking about with the quotes. You know, how do we keep the stories of our customers and how they're being successful in front of people? And so we're taking this quarter to kind of relook at some different ideas as our company has changed, and it's all about experimentation, so we can go in Q1 with with a solid plan in place. But one other thing I wanted to touch on is, because we talked about the second bullet is working into the existing processes. One of the things that we're in the midst of right now is with our customer success organization. We use Gainsight. So we're starting to put some automation based on where customers are in the journey that can automatically send an email to the customer from the CSM with a template that we've put to invite them into our ambassador program, to do an online review and things like that. So we're really trying to look at how can we automate, get into processes, and then just keep the drumbeat going so it stays top of mind. And again, with the lens of what's in it for them.
Absolutely. I think a lot of that is relevant also to how to continue those conversations and prove value throughout the year, right? As we all know, time is everything. And we all wish we had more of it, especially nowadays. But how do you continue to show that your program is working to each of your individual stakeholders? Try to find ways to do it at scale, right? So if you have the ability to schedule automated reports and dashboards, make sure that they're going out to the relevant stakeholders, showing the relevant metrics that they care about. So if they're in sales, show the sales value of your reference deals or the average sales cycle that a reference opportunity has versus a regular opportunity that did not have a sales reference call. Have end of the year presentations with all of your stakeholder groups and make sure that they're multifaceted, that you're not the only voice of customer advocacy and marketing at your organization, that you have a partner, whether that's, your boss, your manager, or even someone in the executive level, because to have them be an advocate for your programs and initiatives, and it's not just coming from you, will go a long way in terms of showing that additional value, because it's obviously being showcased in more than just one way. And then a fun way that I liked to showcase the value towards the end of the year is we would host a lunch and learn series. So it's just a very casual opportunity where we could dial in virtually or meet in person for lunch and have a round robin conversation and have them talk to me about how they would like to see value out of our program as we're thinking about the fiscal year ahead. And then we take those into consideration as we're building out the program for the next year to make sure that we're looking for new opportunities and new ways that we can showcase additional value in the year ahead.
Yeah, I love that. And I know a lot of us are used to being a team of one or a team of two. So I think as you think about value, automation becomes so important, and how you can really expand from being yourself into, being able to really infuse the work that you're doing throughout the rest of your organization. So if you are part of a small team, which I would stand to guess many of us are, really being able to find those internal champions and investing a little bit of time at the beginning to have them bought into what you're doing. And as Victoria said, internal advocates for your program can go such a long way, because as a small team or one person, you can't be in the room every single time, but to have people that understand what your community is and what it does, and can bring it up, can advocate for it on your behalf, is huge. So as you think about your time, I'm also a big advocate of being very judicious with your time, but think about those champions that you know have the level of influence or the right influence, or even run in like different circles from where you run traditionally, or will be in meetings that you won't be in, and focus on really prioritizing them to become champions of your program. So really focusing in on who it is that you're spending time with and how much time. I'm a huge advocate for that. And then, of course, automation and figuring out how you can help scale. So even the example I just gave around doing recordings instead of joining hour-long team meetings, 10 times a week, figure out if there are ways where you can still make an impact, but your time is not a requirement to make that impact.
These are all great, and loving to hear each of your perspectives on these. For me, one of the things that has always been important is controlling scope creep. And this kind of goes back to how you get your stakeholders all on the same page. So the question that came in earlier, what generally happens is everyone does have their different priorities, and they start to expect something more or different, or they want to really do a hard sell through an advocacy program, which I think for most people is not something that you want to turn your advocacy program into a hard selling platform. And so what has worked in the past for me and for others in my position is create a mission or a charter and make sure you circulate it almost to an obnoxious level. You want to keep reminding people what your program is and specifically sometimes what it isn't. Setting boundaries is difficult, but I know, in my time at Staples, one of the things that my team was very religious about was protecting the customers. So it wasn't a selling platform. However, if you had a pain point or a customer pain point, we called it the side door. Can you find the side door to introduce a solution or to introduce this information? Always putting the customer first. And so what has really worked is a 1 paragraph or even like 2-sentence pitch that says what your program is, what it's trying to achieve, and then what it isn't, just so everyone knows the boundaries up front. But you got to stick to your guns, which can be really difficult sometimes, particularly when you're in that stage of trying to win people over. We have just a quick exercise, and where I'm going to gloss past it pretty quickly because we want to make sure we have plenty of time to spend on our next slide to give you guys some time to ask questions. Just consider upfront what roadblocks you might anticipate lie beyond gaining buy-in, because as you're gaining buy-in, you might be able to kind of preemptively head some of those off at the pass and start to implement some of these things. So thinking about that now is important. So put that in the back of your mind, make a note for later. We're going to blaze right past it and go to our next slide. So the key elements of a winning ask, this is something that the 4 of us really put our heads together on, and we wanted to make sure we had something where everything was all in one place. This is everything we've talked about over the course of the last 45 minutes, which is identifying all of the elements that are going to allow you to effectively speak with the people that you want. So everyone here can read. I don't want to go through it point by point, but you want to make sure that you're covering each of these when you speak to anybody, not just the first time, but always kind of reiterating it. You want to tell them what your program is. You want to know your persona up front so that you're communicating the right points to them and all of those metrics that we talked about earlier that are important to them. The channels that you want to use to reach them. So the current opportunities, what do they prefer? The attention grabber, so like the roadshow or the contest, things of that nature. What is it that you want from them? That's really important, and understanding what it's going to enable. So describe your ask. Is it manpower? Is it budget? What are you going to be able to do if they give you what you want? And then what's a successful program going to achieve? These are the key metrics. This is the what's in it for them. This is going to help them to understand why they should care and why they should help you and why they should give you what you want. And then the optional piece is that internal champion input. And this is where, we touched on this a little bit earlier, which is for those of you who already have buy-in, which awesome, this is where you need that internal champion input, whether it's a thought from them or a quote, or whether you use them to deliver the ask in some cases because they might have a little more leverage or pull. So these elements together can really create a winning ask. It's not as easy. There's not a magic bullet. It's not one size fits all. You're going to do some tweaking, but I want to kick it over to the other folks on the panel. has this worked for you guys? Did you come at it in a structured fashion, or did you find at the end of it, these were the types of things that were working, but the piecemeal ones maybe less so?
Yeah, I think in my experience, it took a while to iterate. And when I first launched the program at HubSpot, it was the first time we'd ever launched any sort of customer marketing or advocacy efforts concerningly. So it took us some time over the few weeks and then months to craft our pitch and understand what is in it for the individual stakeholder groups, and then know that it's not just a one-time pitch. You have to ask and position again and again and again throughout the year and fine tune how you're asking. It takes different channels as well. So making sure you're using the proper positioning, whether it's in a presentation in a meeting, whether it's a speaking event internally or through the emails that you're communicating, always be ABP, always be positioning.
Yeah, I completely agree. Similar experience.
Yeah, and I think too, this evolves over time. I agree so wholeheartedly with Amanda's last point around really understanding what it is that your program is and isn't, but know that this pitch will evolve probably every time that you give it, and it definitely does not need to be perfect the first time, because you'll look, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, even where we are down the road, and our original pitch kind of makes me laugh at this point, because we just really had no idea where our program was actually going to take us, and where we were going to take it. So I think having these elements in mind is perfect. And as it needs to evolve, stay true, to your North Star of what your program is and isn't, but be prepared to evolve alongside with it.
Yeah, that's a great point, because nothing is set in stone. And as you do more and as you get more buy-in from stakeholders and more feedback from customers, you've got to be flexible. I think that's just the keystone of marketing in general, right? None of us can stay still for very long. We're always evolving.
Yeah.
All right, we want to take a few moments to get Q&A from folks. You guys have been great about asking questions throughout. We've got about 7 minutes remaining, so I want to make sure if there are things that we didn't address, and you guys are having a great conversation about Sendoso in the group chat. I know a lot of people are using that right now to try to bridge that gap now that we're all remote, so happy to see everyone on that page. But yeah, does anybody have any questions? I know each of us have a thought or two to leave everyone with, but we want to make sure you guys have the appropriate time to ask anything. Except for what's a skywriter? Don't ask me that. All right, well, we'll move on to the next slide, which is just final thoughts from all of us. When you guys get the slide, each of our names is a hyperlink. We encourage you to add us on LinkedIn. We're just going to go through the group. One last thought for your fellow customer marketers, folks.
Oh, my bubble's first, so I go first. Okay.
As always, it's alphabetical.
For my final thought in terms of getting buy-in is try to build your own army of advocates, because you shouldn't have to fight that fight alone, and both internal and external advocates and their voices can carry a lot of weight. So when you can, include your customers' feedback and testimonials into your pitches and into your pitch decks, and build your own advocates. If you can help someone get a promotion or complete a project through your advocacy efforts, make sure you include those examples, because like I said, they carry a huge weight in getting more visibility outside of just the work that you individually have.
Yes, completely agree with that. And one of the things, there's 2 takeaways, I think, that if you're having trouble getting buy-in, one is taking a tops down and a bottoms up approach. So as you're trying to go for those execs, find kind of like those army of advocates that Victoria's talking about, find those people that you can just start working with and saying, hey, what are your goals and initiatives, and start thinking about how the customer programs can plug in. So taking that parallel effort. At the same time, start taking a look at some of those things. I think Jeff calls them keeping the lights on, the value of the reviews, the stories, and your advocates and all the activity that they're doing, really focus on making those impactful and successful, and then start taking the results from those and using those to build that buy-in.
Great points. For me, I always tell everyone this, and some of you have heard this from me before. You need to channel your inner, or in some of our cases, outer aggressive extrovert. Sometimes it's good to be a steamroller. You have to work to build relationships, and sometimes that means being very persistent and like a little dash obnoxious. Because if you're passionate about your program, that's what it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just say too, we're all here, we're in this role on these teams because we're creative thinkers, and thinking about your stakeholders is no exception. So I would encourage you to bring your creativity in terms of who you're talking to, how you're talking to them, and really like leverage that strength that is often really innate in, you know, our type of people.
Great, you guys, wonderful questions. Great discussion. I think the four of us couldn't be happier than to share this with you guys today. Thank you so much.